before you
next
hit
week.
live. Oh, never mind.
Can you telepathically communicate what you was going to say then? So if it was Zoom, in Zoom you could just type it in the box, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, there you go. Shall we go? Let's just kick off. Anyway, so we a bit of an Easter Monday stream. So it's 9 o'clock here in the UK. So what time is it over there with you, Nick?
So for me, it's 1 in the afternoon.
What's your weather like over there as well? Because I don't even know whereabouts you are in the US.
Northern California. Today it is nice and sunny, about 90 degrees, which is funny because originally we were going to do this last Friday and it was raining then. So
that's more like my weather. That's the weather that I always have is the rainy weather. So that's the UK weather. So I'm hoping that you can bring some of that Northern California weather over to the UK. But before I even go into that, and I'll go into a little bit of your story about your channel and whatnot. I always have an issue with it with my American friends to do with, I'm a big sports fan. And that's why I have too many streams of FIFA and the FIFA games on my channel. Like, basically, like I think there's one person that's on there that comments that likes his streams, and everyone else is like, "We don't care about FIFA, dude. We want Star Wars or we want other games. We don't care about FIFA." And I'm like, you will respect FIFA. You will respect football games. What is the issue with the US to do with football? I mean, you guys call it soccer, although I know soccer is actually an English word, not an American word. But I
think that has a little bit to do with it. I think there's a bit of see, I'm not into American football either, but I think Americans, they're like, oh no, this is football, and so they get real. But it's just one of those things where it exists here. We have teams. It's especially big in like the Hispanic community here.
Yeah.
And in other communities, but it's just not national. But even like it's interesting, like football and NBA and hockey starting to make a resurgence here in the U.S. But like baseball was the American sport, and it's almost dying by comparison in popularity. So soccer is one of those things that I would say Americans only like sports that they're really good at.
Well, it's really funny because we, as much as British people like to think we're good at football, we like to think our teams are the best. We're not really the best teams, really. We don't really win the World Cup. In fact, I think it was like 1966 was the last time like we won the World Cup. We haven't won the Euros, which is the second biggest one. So we're not exactly the biggest in terms of winning things. It tends to be more the Spanish teams that tend to win, or the Italian teams that tend to win. But I think for us, it's just like, I don't know if it's like a bit of a sort of a Frodo complex from Lord of the Rings, where we just like the struggle kind of thing. I think it's like, it's the journey of trying to win and not winning, and Samwise Gamgee picking us up again and saying, come on, keep going, Frodo. I think there's a Frodo complex to English football fans, where we just love the journey. We know that most times we won't win a tournament. If we get to a final, we've done well, and then we'll probably lose it on penalties to Germany or something like that, which tends to happen, or Italy or France. But it's that kind of hoping against all odds kind of thing is what we like about it. But it is funny because I think you guys have got David Beckham over there now, who's one of our big stars and whatnot, and is on Netflix and a big show. He's brought Lionel Messi over to Miami, Inter Miami. I don't know if you guys have heard of Inter Miami that much, but it's kind of a popular team. I think we'll get in there.
Like I'm going to be the stereotypical American who doesn't follow it, but I don't follow a lot of sports that well. So, but I will say, it's the other thing that I think has to do with it is, I think American sports has really gotten big into betting, fantasy leagues,
Ah,
doing March Madness brackets,
yeah.
fantasy football, all that kind of stuff, and betting on it.
Hmm.
And with soccer football, there's less a lot less scores in the game.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's not as much back and forth, and I think that's something that Americans struggle. Likewise, baseball kind of phasing out. There's not a lot of scores.
Hmm.
Baseball games are long,
Yeah.
but the amount of points at the end. Whereas a basketball game, up until the last minute, or hockey, you can have a lot of scores right there at
You
the
like
end that completely
high
change the
octane
game.
action, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
funny because soccer, in a lot of ways, has a lot of that high octane action,
Yeah.
but it's in the middle of the field. It's
Yeah.
going back
Yeah.
and forth. It's
Yeah.
not making it to the goal, but it is like,
Yeah.
oh, they turned it over, and oh, they turned it, so,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is why, like, as a kid, I loved playing it, but
Yeah.
uh, but I think that has a lot to do with it. I think it's just the attention span of a score not
Attention
being
span.
doesn't work with Americans. But it's funny because we're going to talk about Sonic today,
Hmm.
and Sonic is big over there in the UK. I listen to a lot of Sonic and Sega based podcasts
Hmm.
that are based out of the UK, so I hear a lot about football
From
uh,
these guys.
from these guys. I was like, so I have like a little bit of like, I get their passion. I feel their passion coming
Yeah.
in.
So essentially now, if my job is over the next few months and maybe years is to convince you to adopt an English football team is probably a side project for me. My team is Aston Villa, so I think that you should probably become an honorary Aston Villa fan.
Okay.
And then from that, you just check on them every so often, watch the odd game here and there, and on YouTube and whatnot. And you just, you over time you build a bit of rapport. And I think because the funny thing is, you get like the English teams, and like they'll have fans all over the world. Like you could go to Ghana or somewhere like that, or South Africa or whatever, and like they've got the English football team shirts. They know the team. They know all the players. You could go to Japan, same thing. Go to China, same thing. They know all the English players. So it's only in the US. We've got to work on you guys. It's like an evangelistic outreach, really. And you guys are the last. Once we've conquered the US, then basically the rapture can happen in footballing terms. So that's basically you're the last unevangelized nation when it comes to football. I think so. There a few cross metaphors there, but I'll work on you, Nick, to be an Aston Villa fan. That's my goal for the next few months or years. Depends how long it takes me to win you over. So today we're going to kind of talk about Sonic the Hedgehog. Now it's really interesting because I think that most people probably our age, and I think we're probably a similar sort of age, will have a kind of origin story with Sonic in terms of, okay, when I was young, this is what kind of drew me towards this franchise. And then maybe kind of some of us went away from it a little bit. Things seemed to calm down. And then the emergence of the Sonic, to be honest, the Sonic games never really stopped, did they? But the emergence of sort of new media, the Sonic films, the cartoons, animation stuff, as kind of, I think, kind of took it up a few notches, so that the popular image of Sonic again, especially with the films doing so well, I think it kind of brought in a theme of, I looked at the Sonic films and I thought these are like just simple, straightforward films, hero's journey, well made, funny, kind of family orientated to a degree as well. What I really noticed about the films were that there was a lot of diversity in the films, a lot of diversity actually, but it never felt woke, which is quite interesting. Like, it never felt like the diversity is forced or put in there in a weird way, and the ticking boxes, and it's gone, and it's like, oh gosh, not another film that's kind of gone weird, and a lot of the fans who are sort of faithful Sega fans and Sonic fans were like, yeah, these films are great. These are great films. No one's complaining about anything really. There was obviously there was a little bit of a kicking off when there was the initial animation was shown on the first film. I remember like the overly anthropomorphic Sonic freaked a few people out, and they had to go back to the drawing board.
Well, what's funny is so I follow a lot of the people because I've been in the Sonic community, and the now I'm going to forget his name, but the head director on the movie, he took full responsibility for what it was before, but he some of the writers have a podcast called The Best Movies Never Made, and they read scripts of movies that didn't happen.
Oh wow!
And they were doing the original script for the original Mario movie. So not what we got, but what it was originally supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so they stopped and they started talking about some of the background of Sonic. And essentially, I am convinced that they leaked that picture on purpose, because what was happening is they originally wanted him to look like a Looney Tunes, just straight up game Sonic in the world.
Yeah.
And they showed it to the executives, and they're like, have you seen Detective Pikachu? Have you seen, no, he's got to look realistic. Make him this. And they kept, and because they tried to go hard, the other, corporate was making them do this. So after that came out, that gave them, the writers and the different ones working on it, the ammunition to basically go to corporate and say, people are upset. We've got to do it right. And so then they came up with the compromise, and they got someone from the Sonic comics to come draw the redesign that they used in the movie.
Oh, wow.
That's so amazing.
Cool. That is so cool. That is so cool. And I think when you think about it, though, fans, and I suppose the heart of some of the, when I first started kind of getting a little bit into sort of podcasting and then streaming on YouTube, I was drawn through Star Wars, and I was like, I'd watched different sort of geek groups talking about Star Wars and talking about the fandom war. And to be honest, part of me likes the drama. I'm going to be honest with you. Part of me likes the drama, likes a bit of an argument here and there. Long as there's boundaries, we don't need to call people morons just because we don't like their takes on Star Wars. But we're allowed to be like, listen, if I think your views are a little bit off or you give a bad argument, I'll say I don't really like your argument, and this is why. But I won't go too far on it. But what I like about what they did with Sonic is the fact that they listened to the sort of initial response of the fans and the community. And I think, I'm kind of thinking now, imagine if we had a little bit more of that in Star Wars, you know what I mean? Or in Star Trek and other franchises. If we had them okay, it doesn't mean that you don't have to completely compromise your vision for the fans, because you might always need to do something new to make new fans, or you might want to take a franchise a different direction just to see what you could do with it and play with the genre a little bit. But ultimately, knowing that actually we're not trying to wind up the fans and sort of disenfranchise them and just say, oh, we don't like you anymore, we don't need you anymore, we'll just get new fans. But actually, okay, let's see what we could do, because we're making it with you in mind. We care about the community. And that's what I liked about what they did with Sonic.
And I feel like it's not so much just that they have to cater and make changes to the fans. Yeah. The bigger part of it was their attitude in response. Yeah. They didn't come out and then they didn't make the change and go, well, this is because the fans made us do that. They were always nice in their communication with the fans. And that's something specifically with Star Wars that, a lot of these brands are doing this, but with Star Wars is having people at Lucasfilm attacking fans, making statements about that's fans fighting fans is one thing. Yeah. But when the studio comes out and starts insulting the fans, that's when it's like, whoa, what is going on? You can either ignore it.
Did she do it directly? Did Kathleen do it? Is it a myth that she did it directly, or is it kind of sort of, is it people reading between the lines? Is it sort of inference to the best explanation type of thing?
I don't know if Kathleen Kennedy, I'm trying to think of a situation, she's done campaigns, the Force is female and stuff like that. but as far as like
That's
directly
Nike
her,
one,
but
isn't it? Was it
she's
the
not
Nike
on
one?
Twitter.
Yeah.
She's not the Pablo Hidalgo. She's not the actor. She's not like, when you look at the overall the main Star Wars Twitter, or when they have like a representative from Lucasfilm do an article with Variety, and they say, well, and they say, oh, well, we had to be warned that there was going to be racism against me before I was in the movie, before the show even drops. They're talking about how there's going to be a backlash, or there's going to be, and that's coming from official channels. You know, Mika Turner, she didn't get told that, hey, you know, you're going to be in Sonic, but there's going to be a bunch of upset fans. You're in Sonic. That's the stuff like that's gaslighting, I think, is when they put that stuff out there before there's even a controversy, and then that stirs it up and creates the controversy that they were saying was going to happen.
It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like they're kind of making it come to pass themselves, and it's like, see, look at this. We told you. It's like, yeah, but you literally sowed the seeds for it to manifest in the first place, sort of thing. That kind of scenario. Yeah, that's interesting. So, okay. Well, I've got a little daughter, and she's like, and I'm trying to get her into all these different franchises. So I've got her into the Star Wars cartoon, the Young Jedi Adventures, and she's kind of like likes that as well. It's actually not that bad. It's actually quite okay, especially like if you're watching it with your 3-year-old, or nearly 3. And then I've tried to thought, okay, you know what? Let me try and get her into Sonic, because I grew up on Sonic and grew up on the back in the sort of late 80s, early 90s. I grew up on the Sonic video games on Mega Drive. My first console was a Mega Drive, not a Master System, which gives you a sort of age range, a sort of timeline there of because I had friends that had the Master System, and I was like, no.
The Master System in America was almost non-existent in presence.
Real?
Yeah, but the UK is one of the top markets it sold.
Yeah,
because it didn't sell well in Japan, it didn't sell well in the US, but it sold really well in the UK and really well in Brazil.
And Brazil, of all places, the Portuguese speaking, my Portuguese speaking friends.
Yeah, there is still, well, Sega still sells it in Brazil to this day.
The Master System.
Yes.
No way. In the UK, if you want to get like there's shops that do it like secondhand, like Computer Exchange and places like that. I don't know if you guys have Computer Exchange, but you've probably got an equivalent. So you can go and buy it for like probably 20-30 quid in the UK and whatnot. I've bought a secondhand Mega Drive, because the original one I had I sold years ago. Then I bought a Game Gear. I wish I hadn't sold my original Mega Drive, and I wish I didn't sell my Game Gear actually as well, because imagine having them now. But like, although I know you can still probably source them if you look hard enough. But I did buy another Mega Drive.
But you know, it's getting crazy. There's been the last it was already going crazy, but since COVID, like collecting right now.
Yeah, is
just like the respawn, specifically if you're buying online. Like if you find somebody has it at a yard sale, that's good. But if people know what they have, like Sega Saturn games, are they're like, oh, it's $150 for this Sega Saturn. I'm like, really? That's just insane. I can just go burn the CDs.
Yeah, that's funny. There's so many things I just think about. What I love, I really love this. There's so many stuff about Sega and Sonic that I love. Literally, you could talk about Sega in its own right for ages, and they sort of they what they've done with culture and their journey and whatnot. And then Sonic's another stream of that as well. And going back to what I was saying with my little daughter is, I've managed to get her into the Sonic the Hedgehog TV shows on Netflix. So you've got Sonic, the new one I think is Sonic Prime.
Yes.
So I was like really into Sonic Prime. I'm nearly up to date with it. I think I'm just on end of season 2 or something like that now. But it's really good. I was like, oh my gosh, they've done it very cinematic, very, very sort of. It has quite a high production value. The pacing of it's really good. high energy sort of show.
So I really liked Sonic Prime. The fandom didn't. You will see the one issue it really has in season 3. Season 3, they didn't have a whole season's worth of info or of story. And so
I haven't finished. I haven't really got to season 3 properly yet.
They have a big like end game like battle.
Yeah.
Against endless waves of robots.
Yeah.
And it takes 4 episodes. It's really cool fight scenes.
Yeah.
But it's like everybody's down. We can't go on. Somebody gives a speech, and then they get up and they fight more. It's like every episode ends with them like all on the ground. We can't do anymore.
Have they run out of ideas? Have they run out of ideas, basically?
It's like Netflix said, "Oh, you got to do 3 seasons, so we need like an extra," because it was originally all made as 1 season.
Really?
And then, but that's how Netflix does their animation.
Yeah.
Is they take what would be a standard network TV show, and then they split it up into seasons. And I think they just didn't have enough to make a full 3, so they just kind of extended that last season. And I think it's a good story. And I think people got too stuck on that, oh my goodness, this last bit went on forever. But the story in that last bit is good. It's just battle sequence takes too long.
I mean, I love the idea of the sort of multiverse aspect of it. Obviously, you got different iterations of the reality from the prism energy, and I love that it would instantiate a completely different, altered reality that is kind of where Sonic would appear different in it. His shoes are different in it. Sometimes his outfit's slightly different in it, and you're not sure, and you don't know at first why that is. It kind of reveals out as the story goes along. So it's a lot of intrigue. I loved how the first season started. You went straight into the action. You're kind of having to work it all out. Like, what's going on? Why is it here? And I found it quite intriguing. Actually, I was like, oh, this is good. And obviously, with stories like that, obviously as it goes along, it's sometimes harder. Once you go through the middle and then to the back arc of it, it's harder to keep the momentum going. But the start really got me, and I enjoyed the tone, I enjoyed the pace, I enjoyed the action of the first 2 seasons, and so I really got into that more than my daughter did. Now my daughter, she prefers Sonic Boom as a show.
Yes,
she prefers Sonic Boom, and primarily because she loves Tails, and she straight away she picked up on the fact that because obviously in Sonic Prime, the Tails character ends up really being dominated by 9. So his iteration of Tails is kind of very different to any other Tails that you really get. Very kind of cynical in a way. I think there's a good soul in there. I think maybe he's trying to find his way in the world. Bless him. So I don't know what actually happens to him in season 3, but I think there's a good. Yeah, I think there's a good soul in there. I think he just doesn't want to get hurt, and I think he's been hurt and he's looking out for number 1. But I still think there's goodness in him. But because my daughter is a purist at heart, she's like, no, he's naughty Tails. So basically, he's the naughty Tails. So she wants to constantly watch Sonic Boom because the good Boy Scout archetype Captain America version is in that one. So she wants him, she likes him better, which is funny.
And I would say before Sonic Boom came out, if you told me that they were going to do a cartoon that was basically Seinfeld, but all the characters are Sonic characters, I would have said no. But it works. It works so well.
Oh my god!
And some of the issues that they tackle in that, like,
it's so funny
issues, and they do it funny. I think at like the time, there's a scene where, like, speaking of soccer, they're playing soccer, and Amy wins a goal, and she says, "Finally, a woman won," or something like this, and then Knuckles turns to him and says, when you call it out like that, it points out the fact that women don't normally, or something like that, and they all look to him, and he says, "What? I can be a meathead and a feminist." It's just like they get things that would normally get people riled up, but the show has an energy to it.
It's funny
that allows it to do those jokes.
Well, this is the thing, and it will tap into Star Wars a bit and what we talk about and how we view sort of different franchises is actually you can tell funny jokes and you can push boundaries if you're nuanced and you're clever and you win people over with you so that everybody's laughing at the joke. When you do it that way, you can actually kind of push a few boundaries and push a few sort of tropes and actually kind of. So I mean, I remember what was the plot story where basically I can't remember which character it was, but one of the characters wanted to go along with Sonic and the rest of them, and I think he gets injured and they blame Sonic for it. And Sonic's like, "I told you not to come along," and then he gets really, and then Sonic gets annoyed with the village, and he goes, "You people," and they gasp and go, oh, "What? You called us you people?" And he's like, "Oh my gosh!" It's like, well, what else am I going to call you? Like, yeah, you people. It's like, oh, you can't say that. You can't call us you people. And it's just like, oh gosh,
yeah, he basically has to go to PC's correction school, like anger management.
Yeah, it's just so funny. Yeah, it's just, oh my gosh. And I didn't think I'd like Sonic Boom as much as I did, but it's absolutely hilarious. It's so funny. It has jokes that like grown-ups and adults will get, like, oh yeah, that's like that will fly over the head of like quite a lot of children, but adults will totally get that. That's really, really funny. Yeah, it's probably one of the best comedic animated shows I think I've come across in a long time, if I'm being honest. And it's unfortunate that it hasn't
holds up for adults. That's what I like about is a lot of times real slapsticky funny cartoons that are made today, they can be a little bit grating for adults. So I've got an 8-year-old at home. She gets into a show and it's fine at first, but then when she's watching it for like the 8th run through of the show, and you're hearing the sound effects and the noise, and you're like, enough, find a new program, get stuff. But Sonic Boom has just a good mix of that. Now, if she is a Tails fan, she'll probably like Sonic X.
Oh, I've seen that advertised.
The voice acting isn't as good in Sonic X. It's there is a character that they have, a human boy, Chris Thorndike, that like they have to figure out how to have him go and all these things. And it's funny because there's things from that show that didn't work in that cartoon that they have pulled for the movies, similar characters, and they work so much better in the movie. But there's just, the third season of that has a huge Tails arc, and it's sci-fi. It's Sonic goes out into space and fights aliens.
Oh, nice.
So, but Tails has a love interest and whole development there. So he gets a lot of time to shine in that show.
Yes.
So she might like that one, and it's kind of done in because that one was made in Japan, and then 4Kids brought it here. So it's an anime. So it's yeah, my favorite one's always going to be Sad AM. That's the one I watched as a kid.
Okay.
And I was like, what was your initial, and then maybe I'll tell myself, how did you first get into Sonic or
I think it. So for me, I think it was the game. So it was. So I got a Mega Drive, and it's gonna be. I'm talking now. I probably got a Mega Drive. It's probably early 90s, maybe like 90, maybe like 1989, 1990. I probably got a Mega Drive around about then. I think can't be much later than that. So I got a Mega Drive, and no, maybe it was about 91. So I got a Mega Drive, and then and the first game I had with the Mega Drive, it came with it was Altered Beast, actually, of all games, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. I thought it was really spooky and weird and brilliant, and I loved that. And I think that got me into Sega because I was already a fan of sort of the sort of the Greek myths sort of films. So I was already a fan of sort of, if you think of Jason and the Argonauts, so if you think of all those sort of that type of genre, I already liked that type of genre. when I was that sort of age in films, it was the Greek myth films, Clash of the Titans and things like that as well, and then it was the spaghetti westerns as well. So they were the two sort of heroes that are kind of that type of heroes that I was really into. So there's always either somebody with a sword or a gun, basically, was essentially what I was into. And so Alter Beast was the sort of Greek aspect of it. It was like, oh, that's really great. And then from that, I had friends at school, this is primary school now, that had a Master System. And they used to bang on about Alex the Kid. And I was like, okay, Alex the Kid, whatever. I was like, okay. So I had a friend that had a Master System. I had to go there. I was like, that's all, the old nice 8-bit graphics. And I was like, oh, this is okay. This is cool. The colors are popping. This is great. And then I had a friend get Sonic. And I was like, what is this? Look at the graphics, 16-bit. And I was like, I'm not getting a Master System. I'm getting a Mega Drive. So I got my mom to get me a Mega Drive. I'm like, yes, got my Mega Drive. Come on. And I was like, the graphics got me of Sonic 1. The graphics were just like the graphics and the music. The music was like next level. Like you could just literally have a party playing the game and just dancing to the music. It's just like this music's so cool. The music's cool. The graphics are absolutely next level, and then what made it even better, thinking about like the rivalries you get in sports, like we were talking about earlier, how tribal you can get. I had loads of friends that had a Super Nintendo, so then they were banging on about Super Mario, and so what happened is you got this sort of divergence of the Sega fans, Sonic fans versus the sort of Super Nintendo Mario fans, and I was strictly 100% Team Sonic. And so some of my friends in my class would bang on about Mario and their Super Nintendo. I'm on about, no, Sonic's number one. That's my guy. And that was my journey into sort of Sega and into the sort of the mythos of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned Ultra Beast, because I think the packing game in '91 changed to Sonic and was Ultra Beast before that. And interesting arcade port and stuff, but it goes to show you, up to that point they were in search of a mascot, because on the Master System it was like, oh, is it Alex Kidd, is it Wonder Boy, is it Opa Opa, who's the mascot of the company? And they kept just creating characters and that, but nobody, and Sonic was specifically created to battle Mario, and I think in a lot of that is why he's so good multimedia wise. And even when he fell off in kind of the game's quality for a bit there, the multimedia presence has kept him relevant. Even though if you were to look at sales, like Nintendo won, there's no Sonic sales are nothing compared to a Mario sell, and they're multi-platform, and still Mario outsells it. But Sonic, I think, has a bigger brand recognition as far as like cartoons and all the stuff. Like it has a big market. And so for me, so I grew up, for the first half of my childhood, we were poor. And then it was funny, my dad's job got eliminated, and there was an opening for a job that was a promotion. And he took it and got that. And so for when I was a kid, we couldn't afford video games. And so I didn't have any. And then 93 or I think it's 94, McDonald's had the contest to win Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And I won.
No way.
I won the game, but I didn't have a system to play it on. I had to go to other people's houses to play the game.
Oh, you have ingenuity.
Yeah, and at the time, a Genesis still cost around $200, even though it was a couple. It was getting, and it wasn't too long after that it went down to $150. But it was still outside of my parents' price range, and so I spent the next 4 years occasionally getting into play it at somebody else's house, but I had that game manual. And I would sit in my room and look at the pictures in the game manual and look at the box, and I would just dream about how amazing video games must be. And then the cartoons came out
Yeah.
around that time. And so then I was watching a Set AM with the Freedom Fighters and all that, the Adventures of, which is the kind of the Looney Tunes one, with Scratch and Grounder and all that. And so I was watching that, and at the same time I was watching all the other bad video game cartoons, you know, the Donkey Kong and the Mega Man one and stuff like that, the Mario ones. I was watching just, I wanted video games, you know, I was like really into video games despite not having any. And then right when my dad got that promotion, we had to move and relocate for it. And I'm in a new city, and I'm at a yard sale, and they've got a Genesis with like 8 games for $25.
No, they don't.
At a yard sale, yeah. And so
that's crazy.
I took my lawn mowing money, and I bought it.
And I bet you've seen White to get that home.
Oh, I know. It was like, and that was kind of the beginning. And I turned around like 2 months later. I bought a Game Boy for like $10 at a yard sale.
What?
Like, this was right around the time when like PlayStation was king. The N64 was coming out because it was 98.
Yeah.
So all these kids were trying to get new stuff, so they were selling off all this. And I ended up buying a second Genesis for another $20 just because I wanted the games they had with it.
Yeah.
So
That's so cool.
I was doing that, and this is back when you could go into a game store. You know, now you go into like a GameStop, or is it Game Exchange there?
There's loads of them. There's Game, there's the Computer Exchange, there's loads.
Yeah,
there's a few of them.
So you go into them, and it's like you trade something in, and they want to give you like $2 for it, but then it's only like $2 off like the new price when they sell it to you. And it's like, what's the point of buying a used if you're gonna...
They're basically snake oil salesmen, aren't they, really? They are.
Yeah, but back then, you could pick up Genesis games. I remember our local one, they had Genesis games were $5 a piece, and Super Nintendo were $7 a piece.
Yeah.
And so, and it wasn't too long after that I bought a used, but and at the time, so I was this kid, I was watching the cartoons. I couldn't afford the comics, but the comics, the Archie Sonic comics, they were available in grocery stores. So not comic shops, but grocery stores. So what I do is while my mom shopped in the grocery store, I would read the latest Sonic comic and then put it back on the shelf.
That's clever. I used to do things like that a lot as well.
And so I was just really into it. And then the first system I ever bought new from a store was the Dreamcast.
Ooh, I didn't get the Dreamcast. I didn't even get the Saturn or the Dreamcast.
I just remember before it came out, they had a demo of it at Toys R Us.
Yeah. Toys R Us.
And I remember being blown away
by the graphics.
Graphics of this. Yeah. I could not figure out how to play. I'd never played a 3D game before. Yeah. I was like, I gotta own this. I have to own this. And so I saved up and I actually bought it on the day. This is a huge coincidence. Again, I bought it on the day they announced the Dreamcast was over.
No,
we're going to discontinue it. So I bought it in 2001 on the day. Came home, and my dad's like, "You got to go take it back." And I remember having that argument with my dad because he was like, "No, you don't understand. There's no future in this. You just spent all that money. There's not going to be any new game." It's like, I don't care. I want to play Sonic Adventure. And I bought it, and it came with a demo for the Sonic Adventure 2 that was going to be coming out in June.
Did they release that? No.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
But so they had all the games that were already announced were released, but they were going to discontinue production of the Dreamcast itself.
Okay.
And so I got it on the day that they announced that they were going to stop making it and that they were going to be going third party.
Yeah.
But they still, throughout the rest of that year, released the lineup for that year.
Oh, okay. At least they did.
But it was like in a February, like they announced, hey, this is going to be the last year. We're not, everything in development now is going to be for other systems. And they kind of made that announcement. And, but it was funny because I was able to get that, and just the fervor at that time, and being the one guy in my friend group that had a Dreamcast.
Yeah.
Because the Dreamcast was, despite it not selling, it was very popular among like the nerd crowd. Yeah. And so like everybody, all of a sudden, everybody wanted to come to my house. Like before, I was the guy, everybody else had like PlayStations and N64s, and I was the guy with a Genesis.
Yeah.
Just getting a Genesis, like, hey, you want to come over and play? And they're like, those games we played 5 years ago, no. But now I had a Dreamcast, and everybody wanted to come over.
Your street kid was doing really well. They were like, dude.
So
I mean, it was so funny because at that time, then it's really funny because at that time when not Genesis, the Dreamcast came out, Arsenal Football Club was sponsored by Sega, so they had Dreamcast on the shirt.
Oh yeah,
it was really funny. But that's when I got my PlayStation 1. At that time, no, was it my PlayStation 1 at that time or PlayStation 2? I had a PlayStation 1.
Dreamcast would probably be PlayStation 2. Came out the year after the Dreamcast.
Yeah, right. So I had a PlayStation 1 already, and then I went to PlayStation 2. Mainly because I wanted. I've never had a PlayStation. Well, I'd had a PlayStation 1, but I'd never had like a high-powered machine that was like, I got it when it first came out. Like, because I got the PlayStation 1 years
Yeah.
Sort of after. So I got it pretty much straight away. I was like, I had some money. I didn't normally get a console straight away, but I thought I had some money. I'm going for it straight away. So I got the PlayStation 2, and I love the fact that I could play I had a lot of DVDs at that time. So I was like, I can play all my DVDs. You know, it was a very basic multimedia player, and that's why I went for that. But I was intrigued by the Dreamcast. I was like, it always intrigued me. I always was like tempted of, should I get one? But then I think I found out about the fact that they discontinued it, and I was like, oh no, I'll stick with PlayStation. But,
and yet, 12 games came out for the Dreamcast last year.
What?
Yeah, the indie community continues to make games for Dreamcast.
That is cool. That is actually,
and they're
really
like
cool.
like released games that you back them on like Kickstarter, and you actually get the CD with a case and everything.
What? Have you? I'm guessing you've been getting those games.
Yeah, some of them. So it's just it's just one of those things that it's amazing, and that's something that I think is also really cool, specifically about Sega in general. Is their reaction to fan content. Sega fully has endorsed and authorized. They have 2 fan game conventions a year based around Sonic.
Wow.
So they got the Sega hacking contest, which basically hacks existing games to add additional content or to make patches or whatever. So they have basically a showcase where a whole week where all of that stuff is put up on a website, made available to download. Then they have a fan game one. And in that one, and there's occasionally a Mario or a Mega Man fan game makes it in there too. They're not like super, but it is primarily Sonic.
Yeah.
And instead of giving cease and desist to these, they've pulled this talent. Sonic Mania was made by people who were previous people who were in this showcase.
Oh, wow.
People like Christian Whitehead and stuff. Yeah. These are people who were making fan games.
Yeah.
And Sega hired them.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I played these games on my mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like he did the ports on the mobile, and then Sonic Mania, they told him, okay, take the people that you were making the phone, but then find more people. They got like T-Lopes doing the music. He does amazing Sonic music remixes.
Yeah.
Tyson Hess, that he was someone who was a fan that did fan art. Then he was hired by the comics. Then he got pulled into Sonic Mania to do the animation.
Amazing.
The little kind of intros and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then he was the one that got to make the redesign for the Sonic movie. Went from somebody who just did fan art of Sonic and was real famous for being a really good Sonic artist to like getting up through the ranks of Sega. And so Sega taps this fan base talent instead of constantly being super protective. Like Nintendo is super concerned about anything and how Mario is represented. And so they're very quick at that. And it's funny because it seems like you know, we're talking about Star Wars, like they could take a page out of that. They should be tapping. There's just this amazing amount of fan talent in the
Yeah,
community
yeah.
that they don't tap.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
never, I
sad
never
that they
understood
don't.
that. I never understood that. I know Theory. He does his like got a Vader
Mhm.
film project, and then I remember watching some of his videos, and he was basically saying that they're suing him. They were suing him that you can't use this, you can't use that, can't use this, can't use that. And it's like, well, what, you know, the guy's like promoting Star Wars. He's using his own money. It's obviously a
Yeah,
very wealthy man, a popular YouTuber, has the biggest Star Wars YouTube channel on the planet, I
spend
think.
a couple 100,000 on that fan film.
And it's like just let the guy make the films. Like, don't, it's not a
Yeah.
big deal.
Well, I
Make
think his big thing, I remember because he followed their guidelines. They had issue. He got that worked out, but then he's not allowed to monetize it. But then they monetized it, and so they put ads in like the worst possible spaces. Because when they monetize a video he doesn't have monetized, he no
hmm.
longer gets to pick where the ads are.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden they just like loaded the video up with ads to the point it was unwatchable.
Oh,
And you know,
they don't need to do things like that. They need to work on engagement. I mean, I think, to be honest, that would be down to Kathleen Kennedy as well as others within the hierarchy of Disney Lucasfilm. They need to work on better engagement with the fans, and essentially they need to do it. They need to start now, because I mean, people would have said, well, they needed to start 10, 15 years ago, but
right.
you know, you got to start at some point. There's got to be a paradigm shift, and maybe that will only come in if there's new management, new owners, or new management in some way, maybe. But to save the franchise, especially with from the community point of view, maybe end the fandom war on some level. But I think now people are just like looking for other franchises anyway. They're just like, well, a lot of people have had enough of Star Wars. Like, I'll go and find something else, which is not really great because of the history of it. You know, the history with community and the whole sort of journey of Star Wars going back to the 70s. You know, they need to kind of rethink their approach on that and learn from Sega, learn from Sega, learn from Sonic, learn from an actual franchise that cares about the community, that engage in the community, like you've said.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel like Sega listens to us too well, but it did take them a while, I think, through the what we'd refer to as the dark times in the games, where there'd kind of be a fan outcry and they would hear it, but they wouldn't understand the purpose of it. And that taught me something also that we can take to Star Wars too, is that you cannot boil the message down simply. You have to be specific about what you have an issue with. Because I feel like these big companies, they hear a lot of people go, we don't like Rose Tico. And they go, oh, these people don't like, representation, or they don't like, well, why didn't they like Rose Tico? Well, was it the story arc? Was it, you have to be specific about what it is you don't like about something, or they take the wrong message.
Yes,
and I think like there was one of the first games after the Dreamcast they came out with, they made the cast of playable characters bigger than it ever had been. And they had a new gimmick in Sonic Heroes of characters talking while you play the levels. And so the big kind of outcry is like, oh, what is with all these annoying Sonic friends? So for like the next 5 games, Sonic was the only playable character. Until there was suddenly a cry like, why can't we have like other playable characters like we used to in the past? And because they got the wrong message. They were like, we want the characters to not be annoying and we want them to play well, not that we don't want other characters.
Yes.
And so like that's it's important when we're pushing these companies and they have their ear to the ground that we're sending the right message.
Brilliant. Right, we're kind of coming towards the end of this stream, which has been absolutely phenomenal. Great to get you on, Nick, and I want to get, and we'll get you back on again. We'll do something again because it's been absolutely an absolute pleasure to have you on, and you are a font of knowledge in the Sonic community and the lore and fandom and mythos of Sonic the Hedgehog. So great to have you on, Christian Fandom Geek. And it's the first time I've had you on as well, actually. So absolutely. And on an Easter Monday as well, of all types. So just I want to just quickly, one last question to do with the Sonic movie, Sonic 3, or the first Sonic film. What are your thoughts on that? Like, where do you think they'll go with that as we're rounding it up?
So my biggest concern with Sonic Movie 3 is just the story that they're adapting. The fans of that are very protective. They have previously done the Sonic Adventure 2 adaptation in the cartoon I mentioned, Sonic X. Fans did not care for that because there was deviations. And I think that's the big thing, is I think there's going to be a section of super diehard fans, Shadow fans, that I don't know how they're going to take it, but I'm looking forward to it. The story they're going into is a dark story, but I also, I feel like they need to make it their own. This needs to be the movie universe version of the story. It does not need to be one-to-one to the game. People are going, well, we've got to have Rouge, we got to have Amy, we got to have all these characters. And I do think that, like, bringing Amy or somebody in, I don't know if the internet is ready for CGI Rouge, but
I want to see Sonic kiss Amy. That's what I want to see, because Sonic Boom has so much innuendo between them, and so many hints it basically tells you they're together, but they never show it. They just kind of confirm it with little hints here and there.
So prior to Sonic Boom, Amy's character, she was supposed to be originally, she was years younger than Sonic, and she was like a fangirl, like you would see it like a rock star. Like she was just like throwing herself, chasing Sonic, fangirling, and he was like,
like Backstreet Boys or something like that.
She was boy crazy. She was, and since Sonic Boom, they have done a lot to change her character, where she's an actual developed character outside of just, she isn't just I love Sonic, which is all she was before. She was the damsel in distress and I love Sonic, and they've really done a lot recently to make her own character. I feel like Sonic Boom did the legwork. That got a very positive response. And so then they kind of brought that over to the main series, because that was a side series. And
I like empowerment.
Well, Paramount's been really fun. I love the Knuckles series is coming out at the end of this month on Paramount. And you'll see he has the hat from the original animated Sonic movie, the OVA. So it's a Japanese Sonic movie.
Wow.
Really weird, really quirky. But if you've ever seen the meme of Sonic and Metal Sonic butting heads and saying, I know everything you're going to do because you know everything I'm going to do. Strange, isn't it? That comes from that movie. And so does that hat. And the other thing that's in that movie, just as kind of an Easter egg, is in the background of Sonic's house. It's like all of like stuff that he's blown up of Eggman's, and the Starship Enterprise is in that pile. Paramount is making the movie.
Come on,
of course. I just want an Enterprise somewhere, whether it's a model or on a TV or something. I want to see the Enterprise in the background, just as another nod to that. But I think that it's going to be a good. Everyone's like, oh, are they going to show the girl gets shot? The girl gets shot. Maria is part of Shadow's backstory, and how can it be a kids movie? The games did it. It was off screen. It's implied. I assume they're going to do it very similar. I'm sure they're not going to show a close up on her face as she gets shot. I'm sure it's going to be like an off screen implied type thing, if they even do that story. And that's the thing. It's like they're doing the show from a completely different scenario, different buildup, and the way we saw the last movie aped a lot of the story from Sonic the Hedgehog 3. But it wasn't perfect. It wasn't the same. They're combining, they're going to two different worlds. Some of it's taking place on Earth. Some of it's taking place on Knuckles' planet. And so I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for them to come up with a unique thing, and I just hope fans have an open mind to that.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
hear
it'll
what
be
you're
good.
saying.
I think it'll be a story that'll be really good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Nick, go and enjoy the rest of your Easter Monday, my friend. And I'll get you, and
Likewise.
we'll do some cooking again sometime soon. And thanks for
Yeah.
being on Christy Fandom, my friend.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right, see you soon. God bless.
All right. Bye.